Given all the eras that have dominated parts of the world for centuries, my favorite era has to be the classical era that existed from 1730 to around 1820. This era immediately followed the Baroque era, which is a very dark and depressing era. So the classical era was built upon foundations of light and of a very different complexity than the Baroque eras. Music was one of the biggest things that flourished during this era, as famous artists such as Mozart, Haydn, and Beethoven came to rise and be the most prominent musicians to ever exist. There was a desire to resort back to this classical, natural style of life, which is where the classical era gets its name from. And the worldview during this time period wasn't grand because much of the world had yet to be discovered. So cartography was very prominent during these times, and people tried to figure out and explore and discover parts of the world. So they were very uncertain about things. So the worldview was a little kind of quaky. The reason I love this era so much is I've become more of a fan of classical music recently, and it is absolutely amazing how beautiful some of the artists were able to compose pieces. I already mentioned the famous artists such as Beethoven, Mozart, and Haydn that were the most prominent musicians of the time. You would know that Beethoven's most famous piece, the Piano Sonata No. 14, or also known as Moonlight Sonata, is his most famous and renowned piece, which is my personal favorite piece. It is in these times and these great artists that flourished, and during times of war, like the Revolutionary War over in England and the French and Indian War, the French Revolution that took place. An event that reminds me of, or event in a movie that reminds me of this time period is the movie The Last of the Mohicans, where the last few members of a dying Native American tribe, the Mohicans, three men, Uncas, his father Chingachgook, and his white half-adopted brother Hawkeye, set out to rescue two daughters of a British colonel who were kidnapped by other treacherous Indians. And so during this rescue mission, they get caught up in the middle of the French and Indian War. And I recently came across this movie, and it was so influential, and it was just an amazing portrayal of what the times were like back then and what people expected and how people acted. And it was just an amazing portrayal of the classical era and all of these amazing elements of it. So thank you.